This video is sponsored by Ratchet & Clank, Up Your Arsenal.
This is nothing out of the unusual. Cows turn themselves inside out all the time.
Starting something new is never easy. Whether it's coming out of a graduate program in your 30s with no idea what you're gonna do with your meager career, or giving yourself a hurricane of cardboard cuts desperately trying to piece together your pitch for an animated TV series, new beginnings are often a big, awkward, clumsy mess. But hey, as long as you've got a song in your heart and a gigantic satellite dish stuck right up your fat, jiggling ass, then things will be alright, as long as you can excuse the occasional flaming fart blast. Man, the sound design on that fart is so crispy, yet flavorful. You can practically feel the concussive blasts hitting you in the face. So then, hello there to any newcomers. My channel handle is Reviewed to Death, and I make overly long videos talking about stuff I like for money, cause we're living in that bold age where you can monetize anything, from yoinking dangerous animal wildlife to making poor people dance for nickels. Now I do want to be blunt with you guys, I can be confrontational and sometimes have exquisitely unpopular opinions, and I don't know what I'm doing ever. And even though that sounds like the resume of a US congressman, I'm still 60 years too young for that position, so I'll be filling in the time doing videos on every South Park episode, even those naughty ones that you can only see in the background of all those amateur porn films your mother makes. Oh, I'm just kidding, I'm having a little fun with you. We both know there's nothing amateur about her production quality. She's a real pro.
You have been bad, Mr. Mackey, so you're going to have to drink from this glass.
Oh yeah, that makes me hot and good.
Oh, man!
Wow.
But yeah, I'm here to do all the episodes of South Park, woo, chronologically too, and I'm doing it this way just so I don't end up reviewing the same 20 or so episodes that everybody on YouTube does. Sure, yes, we all love the Mormons one, of course, and Scott Tenorman Must Die is a classic pube and parent-flavored treat, but what of the humble volcano? Or what of the glorificus Trapper Keeper? Or even the damn near unreviewable Red Man's Greed? I think it's high time everybody grabs a Chinese person and starts rubbing. But it is my hope that, by doing South Park in this way, you know, the same way that I've been doing King of the Hill, that I will be able to talk about storylines that other folks don't get to touch all that much, shining a light on undiscussed treasures or hideously awful garbage. Or, you know, that's the plan anyway. Whatever Paramount or South Park Studios is going to allow me to talk about is kind of the name of the game here. For all I know, they're gonna get on my ass and try to pull the plug on my reviews of some of the banned episodes, or even some of the supposedly new banned ones that allegedly won't be showing up on Paramount Plus for some reason, I don't know. I guess Paramount decided they wanted to buy the whole South Park catalog in a way that pisses off the fans the most. Like, it's the worst way of going about it. I don't know what the fuck they're thinking, but that's Paramount, I guess. Editor's note. Well, as it turns out, that tweet either sourced its information from a faulty article, or Paramount has decided to reverse its obviously unpopular decision, because at the time of speaking, only the big Muhammad 5 episodes are currently banned on Paramount Plus, those being Cartoon Wars 200 and 201 and Super Best Friends. This is why, in my original script of this review, I said that these were supposedly new banned episodes because I was really weary of spreading information that would end up being false. This is why I generally stick to reviewing TV shows that are like 3 decades old instead of trying to keep up with all the breakneck speed at which current information can come out and morph and be outdated in just a few days. However, even knowing how piss poor Paramount is and how much they're licking Trumpelstiltskin's rim these days, I still had a hard time believing that they would go so ban happy on like a dozen classic episodes, given how South Park fans tend to talk about streaming censorship as though it's like an act akin to burning books, although I also find it funny that the most vocal anti-censorship people I've seen online will also be the ones proudly yapping about how they go the piracy route rather than actually like supporting the show they claim to love by buying physical media, which to my eyes is like seeing people complain that books are burning, but those same people don't actually want to put any books on their shelves. And hey, look, I'm not trying to throw shade at people who pirate the show, you know, because if I do, then they'll gear up to write their very first 5-paragraph essay that they've written since high school in my comments, but doing so loudly and proudly while there's multiple easy avenues for getting the show legally does make you look a little bit like a giant douche in my opinion. So please make sure you get your hands on an actual physical copy of the series, preferably on these really cool Blu-ray discs that just came out, because then you don't have to play Paramount's game and you could support something that you supposedly want to see thrive. Lord, what a concept. Anyway, editor's note over. Back to the original script. Despite Paramount's flaccid cock of a streaming service, my plan right now is to do everything, so if you see a couple episodes missing from my master playlist in the future, then it's likely because YouTube pulled those videos down and punched me in the balls and told me to go cry about it. But if that does start to happen, then I'll be putting the reviews that, Paramount or whoever won't let on YouTube onto my Patreon page, so at least you can see them there if you're really, really itching to see my thoughts on them. So yeah, that's the plan. That's what we're going to be doing over the next few years, and I think it'll be a lot of fun, as this should really open me up to a whole bunch of new viewers and a new audience, and I'll really be interested to see how all of y'all differ from my usual King of the Hill audience. I'm thinking that you'll be a little bit more flexible to my weird thought process, as you have been put through some really, confrontational trials of both political and social natures. You have lived through horror and disgust from the moment you were born. This is where you live. You wouldn't look twice at me if I expressed my political beliefs, which is that we should kill everybody now and condone first-degree murder, advocate cannibalism, and all of us need to eat shit.
Should the Klan be allowed to rally on the steps of the Capitol? Here's what some people think. Well, I, for one, believe in freedom of speech. But then again, I think they are racist.
Well, I believe that they are racist. But I do believe in...
Oh, to hell with all of you indecisive bastards!
And so we must begin our journey of 1,000 episodes with the very first show of the series, the appropriately titled Cartman Gets an Anal Probe, which really does do what it says on the tin.
He needs some milk!
Now, as many people know, because, so many of us have eyeballs that can see visual stimuli, this is the only episode of the series that was completely done via stop-motion animation. It reportedly took Matt and Trey 3 months of work and $300,000 of studio time to produce the damn thing, so even if the pilot had been a total shit show, which, in some people's opinion it is, then we would at least have to acknowledge the drive to spend so much time and monies on one project when you're really just two dumb Colorado kids in a trench coat. Stop-motion animation is just one of those artistic mediums that you have to stand in awe of, both because of the sheer amount of effort needed to do it right, and the dazzling visuals that it can provide if it is done right, which, I think this one is, but some people will say, man, that looks so crude. I think it's pretty good, personally. And, while yeah, no one's gonna look at the pilot episode and put it up on a pedestal and compare it to any claymation classics, as, it's pretty rough when contrasted against other visual titans, I do think that the stop-motion choice was extremely important for establishing the show's core visual identity. I mean, come on, if you spend 3 months grinding through all of these visuals, cutting out the little outfits and hairstyles and background elements and animals and eyeballs and just everything, then yes, the smallest details are going to be burned into your memory forever. I think that's why we see so many characters from this episode, who don't even have a single line of dialogue, reappear much later in the series and get expanded usage. Butters is the prime example of this, as he's in the classroom here, but he doesn't get a speaking role until mid-season 3, almost 40 shows after this one. But you've also got Token, Pip, Red, Bebe, and a lot of other familiar faces. Now, of course, yeah, these designs weren't set in biblical stone or anything, as Mr. Hat doesn't even have eyeballs, and Mr. Garrison looks downright anemic compared to his typically vivacious self. Although I do think it's kind of fitting that someone named Mr. Hat should, have his hat pulled over his face and blind him. I don't know, I can kind of see what they're going for in this rough draft version. I do think it's kind of cute, why not?
Mr. Hat, may I please be excused from class?
No! You hear me? You go to hell! You go to hell and you die! Guess you'll have to take your seat, Kyle.
Got it!
Anyway, this is all to say that watching the pilot episode is a really surreal experience, as some of the visuals are more striking than even the computer animated versions, as there is a greater emphasis on shadows and giant human hands that sometimes show in the frame. Like, what the fuck are those? When is the lore or expanded comic universe or the video games going to explain who these blurry puppet masters are? But I think my favorite feature of the pilot is just how exaggerated the mouths and eyes are, especially on Cartman, who gets a lot of striking moments in this episode. Like, I just love the little meatball in this. He's so good. He's so visual and fun to watch.
Sorry to hear about your ass. I didn't do anything to my ass. It was just a dream. Why is it that everything today has involved things either going in or coming out of my ass? Haha, Mr. Hat yelled at you.
And sure, yes, admittedly, the colors are super desaturated, likely because they're being cooked, like overcooked by an actual overhead light bulb that's over them, but it's also endlessly entertaining to look at as it provides such a distinct contrast to everything else that will come afterward, while also remaining the fundamental bones of South Park's distinctive style. But just like a serial self-toucher posting about why Yoriichi Shihoan is the perfect woman, I've jawed enough about how all of this looks. What of the story and characterization, Does this thing actually stand the test of time, or is it just one of those clunky miscarriages that we can sell as discounted jumbo shrimp? That's a reference to the time that Cartman tried to sell all those fetuses that he found. Remember that? God, I hope you do, or that's gonna sound completely fucking deranged.
Yeah, hi, I've got a shipment of about 31 of the most succulent shrimp from the West Indies. These are killer shrimp, Gary. Your customers are gonna love them. What kind of price are you paying for shrimp? Oh, Gary, you're breaking my balls, Gary.
Anyhoozle, while I don't think that anybody is going to claim this as one of their all-time favorite episodes, it did actually surprise me by being quite a bit better than I remembered. Like, I still look forward to seeing the whole visitors and anal probe aspects, of course, how could I forget? But there were also a bunch of smaller moments in between the kids and the adults that really just helped to make it shine. Just to cite a few examples, I really like how they kept using the word dildo as an insult. That's pretty funny. It's a very nice running theme throughout the episode. And the whole kick the baby thing, that was such a slice of late 90s edginess, and of course I like the whole I like to sing a bit with Cartman, as it is both delightfully random and a nice callback to the Tex Avery cartoon of the same name, giving new life to something extremely old. Even though South Park has a lot of really original ideas, it is still very much a show that is steeped in pop culture references, a show that is made by people who obviously watch a lot of TV and movies and are very into celebrity gossip and drama, and are very eager to put those ideas into their own projects. While I do believe that some series can get bogged down by that method of referential humor and use it as a crutch, I rarely feel like South Park's episodes entirely hinge on whether or not you understand what exactly they're parodying. For example, even if you don't know that Tally being cloned is an homage to the movie Alien Resurrection, the raw horror of that scene is so visually striking and contextually appropriate that it still works effectively even if you aren't aware of what the hell they're referencing.
Please, your omnipotence, have mercy.
You will die. It burns!
You've killed me.
Good.
The show rarely makes you feel stupid for not knowing what they're talking about or where they get their inspirations, which is a really difficult trick to pull off. And speaking truthfully, I feel that the first episode is quite a bit better than some people would give it credit for, and I feel like it kind of lives in the shadow of the anal probe satellite dish gag, which is admittedly very memorable. The pilot's plot boils down to basically just four foul-mouthed friends encountering something weird, and they have to try to understand what's going on. They are very much out of their depth and unprepared to face these monstrous occurrences. Oh, they may try to ask for help, but they are ultimately left to figure out this crazy stuff for themselves, which then makes the audience relate to the feeling of being like a helpless child. And this is accomplished by their moment-to-moment dialogue, which is snappy, memorable, and has an authentic conversational feel, one that instantly draws you in.
Moo. Moo, moo, moo. 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 Moo, moo, moo. 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 Moo.
The whole thing is essentially just the movie Stand By Me, but with more outlandish situations and Kenny being the one to serve as the dead buddy. If I were going to say what the biggest appeal of the first episode and the first season in general is, I would say that it has a certain monster or cryptid of the week format, which does give it a fun X-Files-esque intrigue. You never really know what you're going to see in the show, which makes it exciting to tune in each week and see what's going to come screaming at you, even if, once you know the episodes inside and out, a few of those monsters do fall a little flat.
My arrival connotes the end of the beginning of the end, the new reign of my father.
I got your father right here. I got your daddy.
All right, enough talking with the dogs.
However, even after a dozen rewatches, the pilot still feels quite fun and has a surprisingly effective spectacle. Once you see that big ol' hoopa Jew extend out of Cartman's butt, you know there's no going back. And speaking more generally, more broadly, I think it's really easy for us fans, and especially my peers in the YouTube essay spheres, to spend the majority of our time talking about the really big stuff, like Butter's ejaculatory liposuction procedure, or Butter's creaming goo, or Butter's total butt destruction. However, those are really just the huge headline explosions that blow your hair back, the outlandish stuff that keeps Matt and Trey's name in social circles and their lights on, of course, and those moments also allow scummy YouTube clip channels to farm big view numbers out of just showing whatever the fuck kind of crazy stuff the show is doing. I actually really don't like those channels, because I think they're lazy and have no effort and they're bad. Yet, the real South Park heads out there know that it is the interwoven character moments that really tie everything together and provide the critical sense of build-up and interpersonal drama. And that's a critical aspect that some shock humor shows can sometimes miss, the worst offender of this of course being Family Guy, who can provide those vital bridges when they want to, but more oftentimes than not they will just go the lazy path of having like Quagmire assault Marge Simpson out of the blue or something like that. And here's a really hot take for you. I actually think that the follow-up joke of having Quagmire kill the entire Simpsons family, Maggie included, is actually a pretty good dark joke. It is just done with so little effort that it feels super lazy and not particularly well done. On the other hand, Rick and Morty really did it right, and in the Simpsons' own couch gag, for God's sakes, talk about a fucking slam dunk. Damn. But yes, my point is that there must be that all-important aspect of having smaller moments in between the larger ones, the tendons that hold the bones together, if you will. That's the core difference between something like Family Guy and American Dad, where one show is willing to build character personality profiles slowly, methodically over time, while the other is almost exclusively focused on just getting whatever laughs they can. Quick, 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 it doesn't matter. Just whatever situation you can cobble together, get it out there, put it out there, make them laugh, make them laugh, make them laugh. And if we want to come at this from a more writerly point of view, then I should bring up that Matt and Trey have given lectures at colleges, writing classes and whatnot, and called this thoughtless style of jokes and then style jokes, whereas the more difficult and rewarding content are therefore jokes.
You come up with an idea and it's like, okay, this happens, right? And then this happens. No, it should be this happens and therefore this happens. But this happens, therefore this happens. That's why you get a show that feels like, okay, this to that, to this to that, but this, here's the complication, to that.
You know what, here, let's do a little exercise. Which is a more engaging situation? Situation 1, a guy has a crazy date that goes badly, and then, as if his night couldn't get any worse, his house blows up. Or, here's situation 2, a guy has a horrible date and he ends up pissing off the crazy person he was with, therefore said crazy person follows him home and tries to blow up his house. The first example actually does have a distinct benefit of being like, oh lol, so random, that yes, it could surprise you into actually laughing, being the humor equivalent of a jump scare, but you know it's a joke without any actual substance and is wholly dependent on your knee-jerk reaction. And this may surprise you coming from someone who's willing to do South Park videos, but I actually do think those sort of lower jokes, those dumb jokes, have their place, and I think it's okay that we have something like Family Guy to provide a less challenging experience. Some people really do just want to turn their brains off and float through a more easy breezy show, and I think it's important that those kind of people in those particular kind of moods do have something at that engagement level. Even I don't want to listen to a goddamn symphony every day. Just throw on some repetitive pop song and let me veg out for a little bit after work. But when you are ready to stop being numb and do want something that will engage you at a higher level, then you can turn to something like South Park. And just so I don't sound like one of those, you actually have to have a pretty high IQ to enjoy Rick and Morty guys, I will say that it's not just adult humor that does this kind of thing, as there's always some sort of lower, more common denominator and accessible works versus the more ambitious and higher form of thought across various mediums. It's the difference between like Minecraft and Terraria, Dora the Explorer and Bluey, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, football and that other football. You know the one, the better one, the one that doesn't even need an introduction. While you're busy wrangling with that bit of engagement bait, I do want to dig a little bit more into a few of the pilot's other strong qualities, the strongest of which is definitely Isaac Hayes as Chef, who brings such a delightful performance and presence to the show. Now, I'm not really in the habit of tracking down interviews and supplemental materials in these reviews, mostly because I think that my videos should be able to stand on their own merits and not just throw out common information that anybody could find on their own, but that whole death of the author approach where I discard the writer's intent and only focus on the episode's content itself, that whole approach is admittedly very difficult for a show as intentional and hands-on as South Park. So in this case, I will provide some info about how Matt and Trey got Isaac on the show. Basically, they wanted to get someone with that, quote, 70s soul brother vibe, unquote, someone like Barry White or Lou Rawls or Isaac, although their initial plan for Chef was, let's call it a little bit unwise.
The same thing with Isaac. I mean, we just had this character that we came up with, and we actually
The truth is, we wanted to do his voice.
Yeah.
And one of us, but that didn't go over too well.
Okay, so in the past, I've made it quite clear how I feel about race-accurate voice acting, where I have taken the stance that it is important to have non-white folks included in non-white voice acting roles, just so the scumbag casting directors of Hollywood actually allow a wider scope of people a chance to break into the industry. And that stance caused a ton of people in my comments to respond with the classic rebuttal of voice roles should only go to the most talented person and race should not play a part in the casting decisions. And you know what? When you're right, you're right. Fair play. That must explain why white actors just so happen to get the roles of Irwin and Apu and Katara and Omi and Eduardo and Khan and Marshmallow and Diane and Carl and Cleveland. There's just something about their voice actors that's so talented about them. I can't put my finger on it, but man, they just feel like naturally talented, I guess. I don't know what it is. However, my overly smug use of sarcasm aside, I am not somebody who goes so far in this issue as to say like, oh, these kind of characters should be taken off screen and removed from our site entirely, as Mr. Hari Kondabalu infamously did with Apu, which I do think was going way too far in this whole thing, especially with how he basically hunted down poor Hank Azaria until he personally apologized to him about voicing Apu and made him like self-flagellate himself on stage. That is taking the whole thing way too far, makes it way too personal, and the whole story just makes me cringe in embarrassment. Like, yikes. My relatively minor voice acting hang-up is exclusively with the larger forces of show business, the casting powers that be, the ones that don't make wise or compassionate hiring decisions, not with the voice actors themselves, who are just taking whatever roles they can get, especially in the more loosey-goosey non-PC age of the 90s and early 2000s, which was just a fundamentally different time from where we are now. And by the way, of all the stereotypical characters on The Simpsons, of which there are many, Apu was definitely the most well-written and the closest to being a main character himself. He was a reflective portrait of a highly intelligent immigrant with a graduate degree that got pigeonholed into a basic service job and who struggled with cultural diaspora, for God's sakes. But hey, who cares? That kind of person doesn't need to be seen on TV. Who could possibly relate to those weirdo issues? Huh. I really wish they had just recasted him and maybe give him a big win where he gets out of the Quickie Mart or something. Taking him out of the show entirely just reduces the amount of non-yellow faces we see. Sheesh. But as for South Park, and it may surprise you to hear me say this, but I actually do think that Matt and Trey could have easily gotten away with voicing Chef themselves, as most fans, myself included, really don't care about them voicing people like Chef's dad or Mr. Liu Kim, who, by the way, they retconned into being white anyway, because we know that this is an offensive show fundamentally, and it seeks to offend our sensibilities. I'm not gonna sit here and complain about the table manners at the Shit Eaters Gala, Their whole intention is just to make a big mess, and expecting them to tidy themselves up is silly and will only make you look foolish for having dumb or unreasonable expectations of them. This whole conversation about mindful voice casting policies really only exists within series that actually give a crap about being called out, or those that want to design actual human characters from real life places, and not those series that are just intentionally going for broad stereotypes or fantasy world alternatives. This is actually why I don't get super pressed about Mae Whitman voicing Katara, because Katara isn't actually Yupik or Klinkit, even if she is coded that way, but instead she is a fantastical alternative. Sure, it would have been great, would have been wonderful if they'd gone the extra mile and actually cast a native Alaskan as Katara, but it isn't as egregious as shows that try to represent real-world people but don't include those actual people in their own portrayals. However, even if you're somebody who thinks that voice acting roles should only go to the most talented crackerjacks among us, and think that this whole race conscientious thing is just cringe PC principal white guilt, or lib cucks acting racist while trying not to be, in a sort of hoisted by your own petard type deal, without a basic semblance of social awareness and even what we'd call today forced diversity, which is a term that I hate. It just sounds so fucking racist to say you have to force diversity, when in actuality we are just naturally diverse. We wouldn't have been given Isaac Hayes as Chef, and likely would have had years of Trey Parker making himself sound like a heavyset black man, which would have been a terrible missed opportunity to find someone who actually does bring a distinctly different vibe and presence to the role.
Get 'em while they're hot. My all-new cookies. I just went and fudged your mama.
Even if you hate the idea that a white guy got told no about voicing a black character, you still must admit that the studio's intervention gave us one of the most legendary and iconic voice performances in animation history, one that is still spoken of lovingly to this day, a performance that we would not have gotten if they had just said, Trey Parker's a really talented guy, just let him sing about his chocolatey balls instead of that guy Isaac. It really doesn't matter, they're the same thing, basically. Despite what cynical racists online disguising themselves as intellectuals will say, we are all indeed made better people by these wider experiences, and we get to have the joy of living and working and caring about each other, and we even get to feel the devastation of when our time together passes. That is a human thing, that is a human emotion and experience, and it's so critical that we get to have that. You know that's exactly what Jesus would say, and in doing so, it would likely get his talk show canceled for it, because that's just the kind of Christians we got in America.
I am disgusted. Your bet was changed as well. You forsaked me too. Oh, right, well, he does have a couple of 100 pounds on you, Jesus.
But in the context of the actual pilot episode, I think that Chef is used to great effect as one of the adults who actually does take the kids seriously when they start talking about the visitors. He is very unlike Mrs. Crabtree or Mr. Garrison or even Cartman's mom, who are all aggressively dismissive of the issue.
You have to stop this bus! Do you want an office referral? No. Then sit down!
When contrasted against those terribly unhelpful people, Chef comes off as welcoming, safe, and can even speak to the kids in a way that doesn't feel demeaning or like he's dumbing down what he thinks or feels. And I think that's why fans have so much affection for Chef, because he's a straight shooter with compassion but a low tolerance for dumb bullshit. He is our canary in the coal mine, the smoke alarm that lets us know if things have gotten truly out of control. He is somebody who can provide fatherly advice without sugarcoating the reality of whatever trouble has popped up, yet he also doesn't fall into the category of just a magical black person who only exists to snap his fingers together and solve our problems. He has his own personality, his own life, and self-determined goals, making him feel markedly three-dimensional. Ugh.
Hello there, children.
Chef, what would a priest want to stick up my butt?
Goodbye.
Now, with that said, I do have to say that I find the whole I'm gonna lay you down by the fire and make sweet love all night long, that whole aspect isn't really my favorite part of his character, but I do enjoy Isaac's singing itself. I get that it's just supposed to be one of those silly character quirks where he's so locked into the sexual mode of sultry singing that it comes up at inappropriate or random moments. Oh, how wacky! And I do admit that without it, he would feel a bit too normal for this out-of-control world. He would just be a nice guy who offers sound advice, which would become too formulaic or boring. So even though, yes, I can appreciate very much from a writer's perspective the reason why these jokes exist, and I mean, come on, it's Isaac Hayes, you gotta have him sing a little bit, that would be too silly if you didn't, I do find myself occasionally waiting for him to snap back to reality so that we can keep the plot moving forward. The singing moments sometimes feel like they bog everything down and just bring the plot to a screeching halt. But again, I wouldn't want to take the singing out, of course. I just find the topics that he sings about just a little tiresome on multiple rewatches, and I acknowledge that's mostly a me problem. And hey, it's because of this quirk contrasting against his otherwise grounded personality that he benefits from being both understandably normal and ever so slightly off kilter, which does create some amazing laugh out loud moments.
Dag nabbit children, how come every time you come in here you gotta be asking me questions I shouldn't be answering? Chef, what's a clitoris? What's a lesbian, Chef? How come they call it a rim job, Chef?
This same duality of contrasting qualities is also why Cartman comes off as a big winner of the pilot episode, because he's simultaneously a pathetic kid who is in way over his head with all this alien voodoo bullshit, and he is a recognizable brat, someone who will cause the hairs on the back of any parent or childcare professional's neck to stand up. And yet, even when he is pushed to this really silly extreme, Cartman is the kind of person who will go to the most wild mental lengths to distance himself from this unpleasant reality.
Cartman, there's an 80-foot satellite dish sticking out of your ass! Sure, you guys, whatever!
You can just immediately tell that Cartman is going to be somebody to watch, a big draw of the show, the kind of character that's going to push everyone else into uncomfortable situations, usually because of his own selfishness or bad luck or poor choices. But on the other side of the coin, I actually find Stan and Kyle fairly unremarkable in this debut appearance. Sure, Kyle at least has the conflict with Ike to give us the emotional core, the goal that we want to see resolved by the end of things, the driving force of the plot, but I'm pretty lukewarm on the whole kick the baby stuff. It's a joke that they've returned to quite a few times throughout the series, and is almost the representative battle cry of their earliest seasons, a kind of meme before there were memes, but on its face, I find it a bit contradictory to how much Kyle supposedly cares for his brother. Plus, it's made especially weird since Kyle is aware how much Ike clearly does not want to play the game.
Ready, Ike? Kick the baby!
Don't kick the baby.
Kick the baby!
And okay, sure, I'll probably get a lot of comments about people saying like, well, this is just how siblings are, this is how my brother treated me, he kicked me into the garbage can every day, and I turned out okay, I frickin' got anal probed, and I loved every second of it. Well, you know what, I didn't, so fuck you. You know what, actually, hold on, I need to say something that I need to remind everybody before we move forward. I need to say that these videos, remember, are primarily value judgments from me own head. I'm not here to just kiss the show's bubble butt and clap in an unthinking manner about stuff that the community likes or dislikes. I don't give a shit about that. So even though I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who love Kick the Baby and will threaten to kick my baby for trying to sneak into your heads and hypnotize you into changing your position like some sort of weird joy gremlin who only lives to spread misery, I'm gonna stick to my guns and spit my truth. Kick the Baby can kick rocks. It's pretty dull. And I think I feel this way mostly because of where we are right now with South Park, all of the wonderful content and seasons and episodes, the feast before us, that middling gags like this, the ones that don't really do much for the characters or push the story forward, are just pretty meh. Maybe at the time when South Park first came out and it needed to make a big name for itself, you could shock old people and surprise young folk by having a baby kicked, but that's pretty tame by today's standards, especially since nothing actually bad happens to Ike. He doesn't get hurt or anything, he just stands right the fuck up, so it's just whatever. But with all that said, I do think there is a nice emotional core to Kyle's character right from the beginning. He isn't like Cartman, who's just a big bone joke machine, and he's not the fantastic punching bag named Kenny who gets eaten by a cuddly horde of ever-waiting rats. They just swarm all over him as soon as he's dead. Get him, boys! Get all over him, yeah! No, Kyle has spirit and determination, a goal-oriented personality, one that carries everyone on his back and serves as a diametric opposite force to Cartman's antagonism. And this protagonist role that he currently inhabits will later be shifted to Cartman himself and then Randy, but those two will be stuck in development hell for a couple of years, meaning that Kyle is our go-to guy for the first few seasons. And what I really like about Kyle is that he is not just a wet blanket or a really high towel either. Him giving Mrs. Crabtree a slanted version of his mumbled insults is pretty good, although more for her subdued reaction than anything else.
Oh, wait a second, everybody. I apparently misremembered something I watched just 5 seconds ago. Quick correction, it's actually Stan that makes all the jokes of Ms. Crabtree, so I guess Kyle really is just a fucking towel after all. Hooray! Where's my booze?
And finally, just to begin wrapping up this overly long video, I want to talk about Stan and little Wendy Testaburger. Because I spoke at length about voice acting and the many tricksy aspects of it, I do want to take a moment to also acknowledge the wonderful job that Mary Kay Bergman did in these early seasons. She was the one who voiced Wendy, Cartman's mom, Shelly, Kyle's mom, Stan's mom, Craig's mom, the mayor, Nurse Gollum, Mrs. Crabtree, Kenny's mom, and many others. She was just as much of a main actor in the show as Matt, Trey, or Isaac, being in the first 42 episodes of the series and the movie up until her tragic death in '99. I'm going to be spending a lot of time listening to Mary Kay's performances throughout these upcoming reviews, and I did want to give my respect to her and her authority as soon as I could. Mary Kay, and of course Isaac Hayes as well, I didn't forget about him. They were both real ones for delivering all these wacky lines with such straight-faced professionalism, giving us many different iconic lines that still echo through the series and honestly our hearts.
What is this? It's horrible!
Take that, you stupid dick!
What did he say?
You're an asshole, Philip.
What?
You know, I think the reason why I can be such a butthole about wanting to give the widest scope of people a shot at voice acting is because it is such an emotional job, one that can form tight bonds with the audience and their fellow actors. Is it so wrong for me to want an actual, honest-to-God, proud, red-skinned, native lobster to voice Lobster Boy and not one of those fake blue-ass non-lobster freak phonies? Or worse still, one of those filthy metrosexual crab people?
Crab people, taste like crab, talk like people.
Anyway, yeah, Mary Kay's death and Isaac Hayes' death still stings, and I hope they have both found their peace. Mary Kay especially gave Wendy such a great presence, and I really like how she's used here as a smarter-than-average person to help the boys deal with their visitor problem.
If the fat kid has something implanted in his ass, maybe the visitors are using him as part of their plan. You should use the fat kid as bait to bring them back.
But now we must come to my final note that I have for the pilot, the thing which really fell flat for me, the weakest part of the whole experience, and I'm really sorry to say this, but it is indeed Stan the man, the precious boy whose soul is so often caught between wanting to be a dirty little bastard like Cartman and the saintly compassion and unflinching goodness that is Kyle. Stan is our constant fence sitter. He's the kind of kid who could be an amazing person if he actually applied himself, or a huge piece of shit waste of potential if he ever gave in to his worst instincts. And it's that internal battle that makes him a really interesting main character, because he feels like someone who is trying to find his way, to understand how to balance his wants versus his greater responsibilities to his friends, his family, and his social standing. Sadly, there's virtually nothing of that more interesting version of Stan here in the pilot, as he is given so very little to do and he just pukes on Wendy whenever she gets his king's engine flowing.
Come on, Stan! Ew! Hey, wait! When do I get to make sweet love?
Goodbye.
I mean, I don't know, it's an okay joke. It's very well representative of the kind of overwhelming nervousness that young kids experience when they're near somebody that they like, feeling as if the whole world is going to end if that person sees you do something dumb. I get it, really I do. But truthfully, I'm not a big fan of gags that keep characters from talking and which also don't change their emotional state, and make no mistake, these early seasons are chock full of gags and wannabe catchphrases, which is both why these early days have like this ageless quality about them, and probably why Matt and Trey don't look back very fondly on these episodes, as they aren't particularly character driven and kind of just give off like cheap self-contained laughs that don't really drive the plot forward. I am in no way trying to say that all gags are bad, but if you're going to elevate them beyond the standard and comfortably predictable format of just like sitcom shit, then you do have to take a character quirk and use it in a surprising fashion. As an example of an actually like really great form of this kind of joke, when Jimmy goes to tell Wendy that hey, Stan sees her as a continuous source of inspiration, wink, that moment works fantastically because of how negatively she reacts to the miscommunication, meaning that they are no longer talking. Stan is now in the doghouse because Wendy thinks he called her a bad name, which makes us go like, oh no, that's not what he meant at all. Oh my god, oh, it's so embarrassing. No, I've been there. Which makes it a good joke because we feel that tension. We feel Stan going, fuck no. But the puking thing, on the other hand, just has her go like, ew. And then nothing happens. That's it. That's the whole joke right there. There is nothing about that situation that changes when he throws up on her, meaning that it has no weight and thus no real impact, and it's not really that funny beyond just the shock factor of like, bleh. But I don't want to be completely negative, so I'll say like, okay, sure, yeah, the ending bit where they're talking about what they see in the vomit is like a little cute, I guess. I don't know. Although I will say, just for the pilot itself, just within this one episode, I do think the puke joke was fine for presenting something striking and very memorable, something for the people of the 90s to mention to each other over the office water cooler, like, hey, Mitch Connor, you see that cartoon where the little kid throws up on his crush? Ha ha ha, funniest shit I've ever seen. Ugh. And to be fair, I will admit that much of the discussion we've had here today really only matters if you're trying to look at the show through a super critical microscope. I get the feeling that some South Park fans out there may look at my efforts here today and say, shut the hell up and tell me that you think Mr. Hanky is the most powerful character in fiction. He controls poop, and not even Goku can resist that kind of power. Not with all the food he eats. It's gonna be a poop tsunami and he's gonna fucking explode. But I do want to say that I only dig into these series as much as I do because I care about them, and I have fun examining their themes, their character arcs, and their jokes, which by doing all of that allows us to deepen our appreciation of what makes the show feel special. If I were just sitting here repeating jokes back at you, teeing up clips without any additional reflection on their quality, and just saying like, oh, hey, remember remember the time that Stan threw up on Wendy? I remember. What a classic moment. Ugh, that would make me a sad panda. Nope, my mission statement is right in the channel name, folks. I'm going to review South Park to death, and I hope that you'll join me for the ride. Well, you know, do that and give me money on Patreon. I'm probably gonna get AIDS sometime in the future, given how often I'm at your mom's house, and I'd like to have the cure in my back pocket just in case I need it, which, you know, I will. Oh, and before I go, I did want to give a huge shout out to this legend by the username of Iron, who found an early draft version of my Patreon page before it was officially ready to go for showtime, and he still donated anyway, so I did want to give you a spot of honor in the credits as the only early supporter of my stuff, and I'll put your name in the credits of my next few videos just to show my appreciation for your big leap of faith. I really do appreciate your efforts on my behalf. Thanks a lot, buddy. So until the next video, we can say that the pilot episode of South Park has indeed been reviewed to death. I'll see you guys later for episode 2, The Volcano, and remember, duck and cover.
You're not fat. You're big boned.
That's what I said.
You can have an eensy weensy bit, can't you?
No.
Just a weensy eensy woo woo.